Well, speaking of the old and the new, I'm very, very pleased with the direction the league's going right now. Those of you who have been around for a long time will know what I'm about to say, and those who haven't, well, I'll just tell you for the first time. It's very easy in our 20 years to divide it up into 2 equal 10-year periods. From 1994 to 2004, I fought the hardest battle that I've ever fought. And this is something that a lot of you don't know. It was not against our enemies. It was an internal battle within the league about which way we should go. And I fought that battle for 10 years. And I could tell that we were beginning to make the headway in the direction that I wanted us to go in the year 2000. And I was telling Brad earlier today, I was in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, for the Missouri State meeting in the year 2000. And my wife called me that afternoon. I got up there on Friday, and my wife called me that afternoon and said the phone in the league office has just been ringing off the hook with reporters calling me. I said, why? She said, the Southern Poverty Law Center has declared the League of the South racist hate group. And I said, okay. Go back to my machine and get all the names and phone numbers and give them to me. And I spent all Friday afternoon and all Friday evening until about midnight doing interviews. And I thought to myself, before I called the first reporter, I had got to have something very, very concise and very forceful to say to this. So I said to the first reporter, when he said, what's your response to the Southern Poverty Law Center's charge? I said, we wear it as a badge of honor to be called anything by this vile leftist organization. And that was my response to all of the reporters I talked to. And they did not know how to take that. What they were used to is people, respectable conservatives, crawfishing on the issue. Well, we're really not a racist organization, I just said, look, we don't care. We take it as a badge of honor. And, well, I can say this now because some of the board members who were board members then are not board members now. They didn't like what I said. But I knew it was the right thing to do. Now, I appreciate all you older folks sticking with the league through all those years, because we really had an internal struggle about which way we needed to go. And we finally started winning it in 2000, and we won it completely in 2004 when I gave a speech in Roanoke, Virginia, to the Virginia League called Our Survival as a People. I thought we were going to have to revive a couple of our board members with CPR after I gave that speech. And it's on the internet, and I look a lot younger 10 years ago than I do now. And I looked at it and said, you sure have aged. But I thought the message was good. But the point is that for the last 10 years, we have been expunging the rainbow out of the league. And Michael mentioned that this morning. I don't know if some of you even know what a rainbow Confederate is. It's a Confederate who is so guilty that he's bought in to the left's Trinity. Multiculturalism, tolerance, and diversity. And they want to prove that the South was never a racist place. And in other words, they want the South to be a leftist paradise where we're all dedicated to equality and democracy. Look, that was the fight I fought to keep the league from going down that path internally. And that was a harder fight for me for 10 years than it was fighting our enemies. And I can tell you today that we have won. Our side has won, and the league has finally become what it needed to be to start with. Yes, it is on the League YouTube channel, which I think is called DixieNet 2. But if you go to YouTube and type in "Leading the South Dixienet" and the Roman numeral 2, I think you'll find it. But here is the point, that we've had 150 years of brainwashing among our people. And we've had a lot of people who have bought into the idea of Americanism, the American nation, which, as Ed pointed out to us, doesn't exist. It's a fable. You know, it's not even a myth. A myth is based in truth. It may be exaggerated on a little bit, but it's based in truth. The American nation, as Ed pointed out, is a fable. It is a lie. It doesn't exist. And what is part of the trappings of the American nation? How's that manifested in our polity? Through basically a commitment to democracy and equality. Two serpents whose heads dramatically need to be chopped off. So the League is not what some wanted it to be from the beginning, and that is just a nice little respectable Southern group who happened to favor the Confederates over the Yankees. No, of course we do, but that's not it. You know, the FCB is there to defend heritage. From the very beginning, we said in the League that we wanted an independent South, a Southern nation. But again, we had to fight the internal battles while we were fighting the external battles. And I thought that finally, when the Southern Parliament Law Center did us that great favor in the fall of 2000 by declaring us a hate group, then we had arrived, because we had become a foe, an acknowledged foe of the serpent. And that's what you want. If you are not, to them, a hate group, you ain't playing the game. Amen. My daddy always told me, he said, son, you'll be known by the enemies that you make. We've made some good enemies, but it's only been because we've been moving toward what we should have been all along. And I have to take responsibility for that. You know, we should have been better than we were sooner. But, you know, we are what we are, and thank goodness we've been slowly moving toward the right track for 10 years, and now we're rapidly moving on it, because we have done some things we needed to do. We've become more active publicly in the streets, but we have purged internally the people who were a drag on the organization. We've gotten rid of them. Some of them we've asked to leave, and others have simply left. And we are now recruiting very good people into the League, people who want to make a difference. Look, we are a tribal people, a clannish people. You know, most of us, as I said earlier this morning in my comments, are Anglo-Celts. We're a tribal people. We can't exist in an America that is a fable. We can't exist in an America that is based on the twin tissues of lies called democracy and equality. We can't. Our people have been told they could, but they are not prospering. They are sinking and have been sinking for 150 years. Since the 18th century Enlightenment, the West, and of course we are a focal point of the West, has made an idol of liberal democracy. It has, in effect, become the political default position of most Westerners, including most of those who call themselves the meaningless term Americans, and even, regrettably, most Southerners have bought into this. We accept it as right without any critical examination. In fact, I don't think it's incorrect to say that liberal democracy and everything that stems from it has become our civic religion. And when we talk about nationalism in America, American nationalism, if there's anything at all to that empty shell, it's what we might call what political science books refer to as civic nationalism. But that's not nationalism. It's something else. From this fetish of liberal democracy has sprung most of the cultural, social, and political issues that plague the West and the South today. I mentioned the unholy trinity of the left: multiculturalism, tolerance, and diversity. Flood tide, third world immigration. And I'm not just talking about illegal immigration. You find so many conservatives today who are willing to condemn illegal immigration. I say we condemn immigration from wherever it comes from if it's not our people. Why are we not allowing South Africans who are being persecuted in their own country in before we let some third world in who has nothing to offer? So it's not enough just to oppose immigration. I mean, illegal immigration. We need to oppose third world immigration, period. We also have this thing called moral relativism, the feminist and homosexual agendas, the anti-Christian movement, the decline of the church, public education, crass materialism, the racism industry, and a hatred and distrust in general of the Western canon and tradition. All of this is wrapped up in this fetish and worship of liberal democracy. That's what it means in the end. Is we have all of these enormities, all of these pathologies that are destroying us as people, and have been. In American politics, voting majorities, marshaled every 2 or 4 years, have become our gods. They dictate to us how we shall live and how we shall die. And most Americans say that they wouldn't have it any other way. I go to the polls, I vote, and I'll accept the outcome of the election. To be patriotic, they say we must live with the results of majority rule, whether it's a general election or whether it happens to be a Supreme Court ruling or a congressional vote, anything that has been done within the system. And they will allow that maybe they're unhappy about this and they'll complain about it, but as long as we know one thing, and that is however much we detest the outcome of the election or the Supreme Court decision or the congressional vote, and however much we complain about it, we all know that we have to be bound by it. Because that's what a good American does, is accept the verdict. Otherwise, we wouldn't be good Americans, would we? Well, but a verdict is not sacrosanct just because it was reached through the democratic process. If you say it was, regardless of the immorality of it, then democracy has become your God. And it's become the American God, that and equality, the twin gods. Our classroom civics and political science textbooks did not tell us that majority rule only works where there is already a consensus of sorts on the fundamental issues within a particular society. For instance, in a Christian country with a high degree of racial and ethnic homogeneity, a common language, common institutions, and an inherited culture, most matters up for a vote are only superficial policy issues or matters. They don't tamper with the agreed-upon foundations of society. However, in a multicultural and multiracial empire, and that's what America is, it's not a nation, it's an empire. Majority rule does tamper with the agreed-upon foundations. It is often fraught with dire and even deadly consequences for the losers, especially if the winners bear a grudge. The 51% theoretically can dispossess, even kill the 49% minority. And this is obviously not conducive to civic peace and prosperity. And America is descending into the chaos because of it. But the most important question of all is this: can liberal democracy, our civic religion, as it exists today, uphold civilization? If it cannot, it must be replaced with something that can. Because if we don't have civilization, we don't have anything but chaos. Now, I'm strange in some ways, I guess, because I like a little bit of chaos from time to time. Because things can come out of it that are good. Also, things can come out of it that are bad. But it's very exciting when, everything around you is flying one way or another and nothing's yet been settled. It's an exciting time to live in. But, we can't live permanently in chaos. There has to be something to tame the chaos, and that's what we call civilization. But let's face it, for us, for people like us, white Southerners of European extraction, what other group has ever created civilization? There are other cultures, but a culture is not a civilization. The civilizations that you can count in the world are very few, and they have been created largely by our own people, our ancestors. And to think that civilization, within the borders of the United States of America, that polity, is going to be maintained when it comes into the control of the people who run Detroit, let's say. Do you think that's going to be a civilization? No, it's going to be the antithesis of a civilization. Do you want your children and grandchildren to live in something like that? Of course you don't, and I'm really not asking you that question. I'm asking that question to all those people out there who are not here today, who should be. You don't need, you know the answer to that. Well, projections are that the good old USA and our beloved Southland will have a white minority by the year 2040, or even earlier, depending on immigration policy and minority birth rates. That will mean the end of things as we know them. You can sugarcoat it any way you want to, but that will mean the end of our civilization. Now the question is, are you going to fight for it? That's a simple question. I always like to break things down to their fundamentals, their raw fundamentals. The question is our civilization, the one our blood kin or blood ancestors have built, worth a struggle? If it's not, just go drink, carouse, have a good time until the end comes. But there are some of us who are going to fight. And I mean fight, and like Josie Wales said, fight like you're a mad dog. I think the quote was something like, there comes a time when you just got to get pure mad dog mean. And if your civilization is worth fighting for, that's what you'll do. And you will let nothing deter you from the fight. So, our ancestors bequeathed us their acknowledged posterity, a society based on Christian moral principles, the English language, racial and some degree of ethnic homogeneity, and the British legal and political institutions that we're so familiar with. All this, the Anglo-Celtic foundations of our civilization, will be lost and will be replaced with the law of the jungle. Perhaps Americans in regions outside of the South are happy with the idea of giving away to minorities and to others their patrimony. But if the rest of the country is determined to jump off the cliff, is the South obliged to follow along so democracy can be upheld? Absolutely not. No. I mean, if democracy is your God, then you have to accept whatever the majority dictates to you. Whether that is your own demise, or your own dispossession, or whatever. Now, no man, real man, is going to say, well, that's fine, I'll just accept it because it was agreed upon democratically. It is time that Southerners, the descendants of European Christian peoples who settled the southern regions of North America, make a fundamental decision to break with the Enlightenment idea of liberal democracy and to embrace a new concept. It's the concept that we call Southern nationalism. And Southern nationalism is nothing less than the acknowledgement that Southerners' survival, well-being, and independence should be the primary consideration for here and now as well as for the future. If the current political arrangements don't promote our survival, well-being, and independence, they should be cast aside for new arrangements that do promote these ends. This includes democracy, which ought to be thrown onto the trash heap. Thank you. I know that would shock some of our fellow Southerners out there for me to say that we need to throw democracy onto the trash heap. But I mean it. I mean it. But it has to be replaced with something. And what should it be replaced with? In my opinion, what the South must embrace for its survival, and certainly for its prosperity, is organic or romantic nationalism. A form of nationalism in which the political state, the government, receives its legitimacy from the organic unity of those whom it serves. Let me say that again. Romantic or organic nationalism is a form of nationalism in which the political state, the government, receives its legitimacy from the organic unity of those whom it serves. We've had some speakers this morning talk about that bottom-up organic nationalism, and that's what I'm talking about. The people are the foundation for the government. The government is not imposed upon them from the top. It grows up out of the people to serve the people's interests. Are your interests as Southerners, as Christian Southerners, as white Christian Southerners, being served by the Washington, D.C. government? No, they're not. They're not even being served by the government in Montgomery. That's right. And they may not be being served even by your municipal government. In other words, what we need and what organic nationalism promises is a true nation state. The nation part means the people. The state part means the government within defined borders. And we're talking about historic nation states like France, Germany, England. And hallmarks of that organic unity are race and ethnicity, language, culture, folk customs, religion, and various other things. It is therefore a nation, a distinct people, a folk, F-O-L-K, capital F-O-L-K, which is a term that the great historian Frank Owsley used to describe the Southern people long ago. A distinct people or a folk in the primal and fundamental sense of the term. By nature, it is conservative, and in its main function is to conserve a society that will defend the lives, liberty, and property of the people who comprise it. Their survival, well-being, and independence are paramount. Conversely, they reject the top-down universal hegemony of the elites who rule over us today by chicanery and by force or the threat thereof. What would a South that embraced organic or romantic nationalism look like? It would be a South that returned to its European roots, but with plenty of leeway given for those cultural attributes that are uniquely Southern. We don't have 4 years of history, 1861 to 65. We have 400 years of history. And through that 400 years, we have been becoming Southerners. We are a unique people. Our heritage is in Europe, but we're more than that. So we can't go back and become just like Europeans. You know, my descent is mainly from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, a little bit of Scandinavian, a little bit of French. But I don't want to go back and be a Scot or an Englishman or an Irishman today. I love those people. They're my people. But I'm a little bit different from them because I've grown up in the South. I'm a Southerner. I don't deny my roots, but I'm something else. Well, a South that embraced organic nationalism would be a South that returned to its European roots, but with a lot of leeway given for that thing we call Southernness. We could listen to Beethoven, and man, we could listen to Hank Williams or Hank III. We could listen to both. We could read Sir Walter Scott. We could read William Faulkner. We could embrace and celebrate as good and wholesome all its peculiarities without apology and without embarrassment. Its literature, language, dialect, religious faith, folkways, songs, cuisine, myths, and overall worldview. And it would also draw from that deep cultural well that is Europe, taking the best of that and calling it our own as well. What a heritage we have as Southerners and as Southerners of European descent. We've got so much to draw on to make us a proud, accomplished people. By the grace of God, of course. We don't boast in our own strong arms, our own creativity without realizing that it's God's grace. But it's been a great blessing, and dare we not defend such a blessing? If God has granted us all this, or we just to say, oh well, it's not worth defending. We'll just let it go. That's not what God requires His people to do. He requires His people to defend the blessings that He gives them. That the organic South is both European and extra-European should be no problem for us to accept. After all, as I said, we've been in the South for 400 years or so, and that experience has turned various European ethnicities into a loose but cohesive unity known as Southern. And as we mentioned earlier today, there are various nations within the South. But as I said earlier today, the main and largest nation, the most important and most influential, and the one that's imprinted its stamp on the South more than any other, is that nation that we call the Anglo-Celtic nation. It doesn't have to be the only one, but if the South is to be what we want it to be and what it has been for 400 years, it's going to have to be the dominant one. That really bothers the Southern Poverty Law Center when they say, yes, Michael Hill wants a South where his own people dominate. Well, why not? You know, what's wrong with that? My people have dominated the South since its very inception. And yours have too. Why should we want to give that up? I mean, we would be stupid to want to give that up. But they play on your guilt, don't they? They play on your guilt. Don't let them play on your guilt. We're a distinct people, a real nation unlike any other in the world. Unlike the South, the USA is not a nation. Rather, it is a failed, leftist, multicultural experiment. Let that sink in for a minute. The United States of America is a failed leftist multicultural experiment that is morally, spiritually, and financially bankrupt. Is this something that you want yourselves and your families and your children and your grandchildren to be a part of? I should hope not. Now, I don't believe our founders really intended it to be that way. But nonetheless, it has become that. We can appeal to the vision of the founders and the Constitution all we want to, and it's not going to change anything. I used to think that it might. Years ago that it might. But my sad experience has been that it's not going to amount to anything. The Constitution is what? A nice piece of... Is it a self-enforcing document? No. And even if it was, it's got holes and gaps and flaws in it that could be used by any tyrant to do anything he wished. And it has been. It is no protection. So a return to the Constitution or a restoration of America or the Tea Party slogan of Take Back America, all is empty, the empty rhetoric of respectable conservatives. It means nothing. Well, I'm sure their intent is good, and I'm sure that they're fine people. They are just wrong. They are wrong, and their mistake could be fatal if we accept it. You know, what the USA has become should tell us very plainly that it should have no appeal to a true Southerner. Indeed, it should have no moral purchase on our loyalty. We owe nothing to this regime. We do not owe it anything. Do not let anybody tell you that it is unpatriotic to say what I'm saying today, because it isn't. It is unpatriotic to pledge your loyalty to something that is dedicated to your destruction. Of all the founders, the one that I like the best was Patrick Henry, because he said, never get involved with these Yankees. He said, you'll pay for it. And that's true. We did. And he said, I smell a what?
Rat.
A rat. And I think that he was absolutely right. And if what the rat that he smelled was the United States of America. That's it.
He didn't even want the Constitution.
The USA has bound its identity to the Enlightenment idea of liberal democracy, equality, and all that springs from that dark place. Moreover, it has compounded the problem by willingly and wittingly committing itself to become a multicultural empire in which democratic institutions are manipulated by the ruling elite for the benefit of favored groups, and we Southerners are surely not one of those groups.
Amen.
As I look, and those of you who are my friends on Facebook and all, know that I put a lot of pictures of my children and grandchildren in particular on my Facebook page, like a proud granddaddy would. And as I look at my precious children and grandchildren, I shudder to think what's going to happen to them and their descendants when they become the numerical, political, and actual demographic minority in this failed experiment we call the USA. I won't be here to protect them. Revenge, getting even, will be a commonplace occurrence as our folk are attacked and robbed of life, liberty, and property with impunity in the name of social justice or some other fabricated universal right or grievance. Will the long-established rights of our children and grandchildren be protected by the new Reagan majority the dark majority, who are not products of Western Christian civilization? Or will a majority of wolves vote to devour a minority of vulnerable sheep? And I think you know the answer to that. And if you can bear to think of your children and your grandchildren and even great-grandchildren having to live in such a situation, you would make a commitment today to do whatever is necessary, including shedding your blood or preferably somebody else's blood to keep this from happening. This is a serious issue. It is not a game. We Southerners must embrace a new paradigm. I like that word. You know, it means thinking outside of the box that you've been told that polite, respectable people stay within. It means being a bad child and getting out of the box and causing trouble. We need a new paradigm. We must think outside the box in which our enemies have insisted that we dwell. We must have a new organizing principle, and that principle must be organic or romantic nationalism. It's the answer for the South if we are serious about the survival, well-being, and independence of the Southern people. There is no question about that in my mind. That means the rejection of the status quo of living in a multicultural empire that sucks our lifeblood daily. For our self-preservation, dare we cast aside voting and the idea of the consent of the governed for a monarchy or a dictatorship? No, we don't have to do that. We must simply redefine along the lines of organic nationalism the political and social entity to which we belong. The Southern nation, not the fabled American nation, the Southern nation. In that entity, our interest in moral principles will hold sway, not somebody else's. It'll be our interest in moral principles. And we can determine who gets to be called citizen and who gets to exercise the right to vote and participate in other civic matters. We will decide that. And there'll be no more being ruled by alien universalist elites who seek to suck our lifeblood and then kill us. There will be no more parasites. No more kowtowing to the interests of Massachusetts, New York, or California, or of globalists. The Southern nation will be for Southerners. The Southern nation state will be run by Southerners, in the interest of Southerners. And will that dawning not be a glorious and blessed day? And that's what we're asking you to join us for and to help us accomplish. Now you've already done that. So again, I'm saying this rhetorically, of course, mainly because when we have indoor activities like this, we have a chance to record it, and then thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people will see it out there. It's not a street demonstration, but we're still here. But I'm not talking really to you folks because I'm kind of fussing at you. Not at you. But I'm fussing over your heads to all those people out there who ought to be with us. And I want to shame them. I want to challenge their manhood. And I want to call them cowards if they don't join us. What a blessed day it is in that we know the joy of battle against these people. We may not win in our generation, but I think we will. But just the joy that I wake up with every day knowing that I have such fine compatriots to go into battle with and such a demonic enemy to fight, I consider it joy to be able to fight this fight. I am so thankful to God that He's put me in a situation where I can do this. And it's something that I will never take for granted. And it's something that I simply don't understand. Why any man who called himself a Southerner would not want to join our ranks and stand shoulder to shoulder with us in this battle. But that should be our mission, is to go and find these people and bring them in, introduce them to this cadre, to this tribe that we have here, get them involved in our street demonstrations and in other things, and let them see the joy that comes from a battle well fought. And from a battle well fought, may God grant us a victory well won.